Before there was a Limveld or the Night Lords, there was a place known as the Lands Between. These lands have a long and complicated history of godhood, conflict, and power, but it all began when the Greater Will sent order in the form of the Elden Ring to the Lands Between, and the Greater Will would choose one. One in particular, Queen Marika, who was the vessel for an order through gold set in place by the Elden Ring, a power that enabled the creation of the Golden Order. It encompassed the fundamentals that made the world what it was, gave it structure, a hierarchy, and when tragedy befell her with the death of her demigod child, Godwyn the Golden, who was slain on the night of the Black Knives by destined death, Marika then made a rash decision. In an instant, she shattered the Elden Ring, causing shards of its power to be spread and bestowed all across the Lands Between, causing a cataclysmic conflict known as the Shattering War. However, the war itself doesn't seem to affect the events within Elden Ring, rather it is the actual shattering of time and space that occurred at the moment the Elden Ring was shattered. In the very moment that the realms shattered and space and time fractured came the night, shadowing all that encompassed the once vivid island of Limgrave. The reign of terror and despair would soon begin. Unlike the world within the main events of Elden Ring's timeline, this shattered veil harnessed a more sinister force known as the Night's Tide, or simply the Night. And the Night would wrap and twist Limgrave into a recognizable yet distinctly unique place. The Night would twist Limgrave into something else, giving birth to Limveld. This once prosperous reality was now in constant flux among the laws of time and space due to this catastrophic event. The night is not the simple act of the rising and setting of the sun, but rather a terrifying catastrophe that came with fire and acid rain that tore the lands apart. And in the wake of this, 8 all-powerful entities would arise through the night and seize control of the land. These beings, called the Night Lords, were once revered by the Nox. An ancient civilization worshipped the night and practiced forbidden alchemy. In Elden Ring, we can see the eternal city of Nokron, not entirely unlike the eternal night that now besets Limveld, and not too different from Noklateo, which is the shrouded city in Elden Ring Nightreign. In fact, Noklateo seems to be the Nox's most hidden city, and the people have been essentially shoved underground. In Limveld, we can see that this is a city essentially lost by time, shoved under the rest of the Lands Between and forgotten by space and time, and forced to endure the night eternally. And so, the Nox would worship the night and conjure forbidden entities. The fulfillment of the Nox's prophecy did come with its costs. What the Nox could not have anticipated, though, was in this void, the Night Lord's reign of terror would soon begin. Limveld, now more than ever, needed great warriors who could save the realm from this era of despair, and as such, Nightfarers arose. Gone were the hierarchies of before, such as the Erd Tree and the Golden Order. While the remnants and echoes of these things still exist, they took on a totally new context and form, and what remained gathered through the means of the Round Table Hold, the last resort of hope for the land. It was here that the Nightfarers assembled under the guidance of a woman who refers to herself as the Priestess. The Nightfarers were summoned to restore balance and to stop the cataclysm.
You are awake. I know not why, but once again it has happened. So be it. Condemned, I welcome you to the Round Table Hold.
So to really understand the lore of Nightreign and to get a grasp on how it relates to the main game of Elden Ring, or even other games for that matter, we first have to understand the Nightfarers themselves, as they are probably the most important piece to this. Each and every single one comes with their own baggage, and at least on first glance, they don't appear to have anything in common, but that is somewhat deceptive, as we'll see. But let's start with each Nightfarer. The first is Iron Eye, the archer assassin, a stealthy, bow-wielding assassin who harnesses a larger and much darker tail than some of the others. The next is the Raider, or the Pirate Juggernaut, a hammer, axe-wielding heavy hitter with a lust for brutality. He simply lusts for the pride of battle, and as a warrior and a champion, he sought after the lands between and the tournament, traveling far and wide to pillage it. Next is the Recluse, the Witch of Loss, a sorceress who uses blood magic to heal and empower, but her story is more interesting than you probably expect. Next is the Guardian, the Shield Bearer, a large bird-like protector harnessing a battle-damaged wing and a halberd and shield. He comes from a faraway land and a clan that he was once part of, the Pinfolk Knight of the Winged Realm. After that is the Wilder, the versatile warrior, a well-rounded swordsman who, while having ties to the traditions of battle, truly struggles with the means of having a purpose through this illusion. Next, the Executor, the Silent Atoner, a silent samurai who walks the path of atonement after things he has done in his past, coming from the land of reeds, not too far from the lands between. Next, the Duchess, the Agile Assassin. When given the right items, she is revealed to be a character you have already met and joins the battle as a dagger-wielding, fast-footed assassin, a wily scapegrace and stepdaughter of the Viscount. And finally, Revenant, the Haunted Doll, a vengeful doll bound to a disgraced lineage with the most tragic backstory of the bunch. Your journey begins when you choose a Nightfarer. The priestess refers to you as the Condemned and tells you that there are 3 days, or nights, to defeat the Night's Tide and restore the kingdom. To do so, you set out, arming up, fighting enemies, and preparing for the impending storm until the true enemies reveal themselves, the Night Lords, the remnants of darker souls who may or may not have inhabited the kingdom in the past or in an alternate timeline. Fighting these beings meant using all that you had, including your fellow Nightfarers, to defeat them and bring an end to the night. If you succeed, the next day follows, bringing you back to the round table where you set out again to venture off and fight once more, taking on Night Lord after Night Lord. If you fail, however, the timeline fractures and the world is consumed by night, fallen at the hands of your defeat. This isn't the end, though. The fight resets. The cycle must continue until you break through and win. On the final day, given that you have defeated 4 Night Lords leading up to this, the priestess reveals to you that each Night Lord that is defeated is merely a pawn for the true enemy, the primordial Night Lord. This is it. This is the only true way to end the night for good, by fighting the embodiment, the shape of night, the night aspect, or as it also goes by, Hailster. An encounter with the toughest adversary comes with a steep price. The fate of the kingdom lies within your hands. You may fail over and over, but your spirit must not wane until it is done. Defeating Hailster once and for all provides you with the Night Lord's rune. The desolate sands that you typically fight the Night Lords on also grows, revealing the Round Table. It's unknown why or how it was transported here, but there's a vestige in the back of the room, and given that it's the only thing to interact with, you do so, giving the primordial Night Lord's rune to the corpse. Everything fades to black, and the ending plays out. We see the Erd Tree grow, and a large being come to witness its return to the land. But what does this mean? It could simply mean a return to the old ways for the lands between, but how is that relevant exactly? This story is not nearly as straightforward as that, and it's not quite as simple as defeating the big bad Night Lord and all is well again. This is where the story really begins, and things get much more complicated. In fact, I might even go so far as to say I think the ending cutscene is actually kind of the beginning of the story itself. So to comprehend all of it, it gets a bit complicated, but we must understand all of the Nightfarers, where they come from, and who they all truly are. Underneath the round table, there's a crypt, and the podium inside the crypt reads, "To atone for the first sin, we elect to become the foundation." So to start, it must be stated that the night also has unforeseen side effects for our Nightfarers, the loss of prior and core memories. These are the reasons why they chose to fight the night in the first place, and it is each their duty to reclaim who they are and realize what they must stop. The primordial rune of the Night Lord has a very interesting description. It reads, "A thing with the properties of a great rune harbored by the primordial Night Lord. The cutting-gifted tribe anticipated the coming night and spent many a moon planning its prevention, concluding that their only chance at success was to cheat a god. They had glimpsed what they should not, the very sin of the Erd Tree. For their trespass, so they were punished." Now, there's a lot to unpack with this description, and there's some things that I'm going to save for a totally separate video, but it's worth mentioning that the Primordial Night Lord's rune inhabits the same kind of properties as a Great Rune, which, for the unaware, is exactly the shards of the Elden Ring that Marika bestowed upon her children and the demigods. But with that now in mind, and we remember what the message inside the crypt says, we can take a look at the description of the scrap of paper detailing the new night. Written in the tongue of an ancient people, the passage, torn from its former binding, reads, "The priestess is the very cornerstone of the round table, indispensable. Should the Night Lord fall, the round table too will crumble, as their fates are together bound. Yet, should the round table be remade, perhaps the priestess may be emancipated from her bindings. This might be done upon the falling of the new night, should the Lord's power be lost, and if so," and the message cuts off. There's a lot of very interesting threads to pull on here, and I think this could sort of unravel a lot about what we think we know about the characters, but for now, we need to get a basic understanding of each and every single one of them, even though these descriptions do clearly point to the priestess or the duchess having much more of a direct role with the existence of the Round Table, the Knight, and even Limveld itself. But first, let's start off with the Iron Eye, whose tale follows one of freeing themselves from the past and undoing the wrong. To recap a bit, you learned that the Iron Eye is a member of a group called the Fellowship, a group of assassins who refer to him as a beloved child of the Fellowship. During his remembrance, you get a letter from somebody, and the cracked sealing wax relic reads, "Sealing wax removed from an opened letter, used by sellsword of the Fellowship. The stamp signifies an assassin's oath. Once a target is agreed upon, there is no going back. Such contracts are said to have their origin in the lands between." And the visuals of this wax look very similar to the wax seals used in like the Volcano Manor letter and many others in the main game of Elden Ring. In any case, after defeating the Night Huntsman, he finds a letter that exposes there was a betrayal among the Assassin's Code. It is revealed to be one of the Nightfarers who abandoned their post. He works with the priestess who leads him to the crypt underneath the Round Table, where he finds another assassin, the traitor, who eerily resembles him. Much like the huntsman before who resembled him, he is told by the dying traitor in the crypt to find and defeat a certain centaur and retrieve a weapon to slay him. Iron Eye goes on to fight the Darkdrift Knight to claim his spear fragment, the Eye of Order, to strike down his other self. The Edge of Order reads, "A fragment of the Spear of Fulgor, champion of Nightglow, imbued with holy essence through battles in Limveld. When those who live in death are felled by the Order, they will never rise again." When Iron Eye kills the traitor, in doing so, he realizes that they are stuck, forever entwined to the night itself, forced to fight over and over until they succeed. Realizing that a version of himself previously betrayed his team, he vows to fight on and to right his wrongs, to finally free them from the wretched cycle. The Relic of Fulgor reflects the Iron Eye's own fate, as it reads, "The left arm of the loyal and brave servant of the gods had been severed from behind. As he turned back to look, he fell to despair. It seemed his companions who had walked with him upon the same perilous path had now forsworn the very gods once served." It seems betrayal was inescapable for Iron Eye, and in his true ending, he refuses to end the night. After defeating Hailster and gaining the rune, he slits the corpse's throat instead, ensuring that the night continues in order of ensuring his fellowship retains a purpose. It marks a darker and morally ambiguous finale that reflects his conviction to the world and Nightfarers, as well as his creator.
The night is far from over.
Next is the Raider, residing from distant lands in the realm, fights solely for the glory of battle and victory against the Night Lord. He dons a white-horned helmet, very unique amongst the rest, but learns of where it came from over time. Revealed to be somebody in the conflict of the East and West Seas, he reads wall markings on a pillar that retell the tales of his battle in the tournament of the lands between. He waits for his rival from the conflict to show, but they never do. When he investigates the reason, he realizes that he wasn't part of the Whitehorn tribe after all. The inscription he would read would proceed to say, "The Black Claw defeated the White Horn." So, in a strange twist, he realizes that he was the Black Claw and that he had defeated the white-horned creature long ago in the tournament, wearing his enemy on his head in victory. The battle signified the end of bloodshed between the tribes, as that battle was the truce they had agreed upon. After learning of what had happened, he would make a tombstone in his rival's honor and lay down his armor and kneel to it, honoring his fallen rival. The torn braided cord reads, "A torn magic-warding braided cord worn by warriors for good luck on the eve of battle. The distinctive stone clasp suggests that it belonged to a glory-seeking pirate. The legends surrounding the competing seafaring factions who divided the seas into east and west have been spoken of for generations in places near and far." He also tells us about Weathervane, a sailing partner of his that was like a brother to him. Chapter 8 of Raider's Journal reads, "The Raider gave the white horn helmet back to its owner, and it was Black Claw once again. A gentle wind brushed his cheek. He wondered how Weathervane may have recorded their battle in words. The pirates of the coastal waters love nothing more than a worthy rival. But these days, the Raider no longer hears the gentle murmur of the waves. For him, the sea churns no longer." His true ending really isn't much different in the overarching story. However, aside from the Dawn ending when you destroy the night, sacrifice the hold, and conclude the siege in unity without an alternate fate, Raider's story, if nothing else, gives us good context on what was happening in Elden Ring in the Lands Between, just outside of our purview. Now for the Recluse. Like the Raider, she does not have a unique ending to the story in the sense of a traditional cutscene, but she does have a heart-wrenching scene and a decision to make, as well as an impossible dilemma in her quest to regain her memories. The Recluse, only seen as a mysterious sorceress, spends lots of her time learning and studying in the Round Table Hold, but eventually she learns that she had a child, one of great power, as well as a fellow witch who watched over it. The other witch, the Witch of the Well, would succumb along with the Recluse's child in a battle made by her hands, though not intentionally. She had created a brooch imbued with magic that was meant to calm the storms and darkness in the realm, but when fallen into an army's hands, it became weaponized and destroyed countless lives, including those closest to her. The description of the brooch reads, "A cracked brooch bereft of its former magic, a blood magic crystal received from the Recluse. This brooch powered the accursed Ictaris weapons that once robbed the Pinfolk of flight. The Guardian smashed the jewel at the core of this magic implement, to think that it was once a mere ceremonial tool to calm violent winds. She would end up seeking a spirit of the Witch of the Well, who would ask if she would kill her own child if it meant saving the realm. That question remained to be seen, but she would find a bone fragment on a bed, one that reads, 'A disturbing bone with a distinct lifelessness. the bone of an outer god with the power to expunge divine essence, but that can also be destroyed by the same essence. The choice was left to the witch, as per the wishes of the one who bestowed it. This is very interesting because we have a direct mention of an outer god, which if you're unfamiliar in Elden Ring, there are these deities that are, intangible, but they do appear to influence the lands between to some degree, and there are many outer gods, and you can maybe describe them as elements or features or aspects of the lands, but either way, we never really get much direct reference to them until now. Either way, given that Recluse essentially gave birth or was a vessel to an outer god, she had the power to stop this, but the question remains, could or even would she? She would find her child lying in a bed and using the bone fragment to expunge the night from her child, freeing it from the darkness forever. The vestige of the night item description reads, a clear sign of the Night Lord's presence in the form of a terribly tattered rag. Burned and worn down over a span of time untold, the hint of an impression once made by the engraving of an old sealing stone that can be seen but is no longer legible. The menial asked about its engraving, but how did he know there was one before setting eyes upon it? She would also get closure with her witch ally as well, and would thank the Recluse for her mercy before fading. A product merely of the night, turns out, the Recluse is much more responsible for the night and the corruption that anybody ever suspected. Yet the responsibility of what to do with that choice and power fell squarely on her shoulders in an impossible decision. The Guardian also does not have a unique ending exactly, but he does have deep ties to the Recluse. His people were winged warriors with a rich history and culture. The third volume book tells us, annals detailing the histories of certain cursed weapons speak of a conflict far to the west. An account mentions one such accursed weapon called Ictaris. The blades shared an identical engraving, a symbol of the sorcery of a distant land, a script put down in blood. He harbored countless scars and remnants of his past that helped him to remember what he had been through. The storied history of the Pinfolk is not lost on us, as the stone stake relic reads, a stone stake that opens a sealed-away lock, crafted by an ancient civilization and claimed from a guardian golem. Still imbued with an old yet fading magic, can open locks sealed in a similar manner to the golem. As an important member of the Pinfolk tribe, he was their guardian, wielding a shield to guard the front lines of his people. Though their final battle, however, they were destroyed by immense power, a magic that burned through defenses and slaughtered all the Pinfolk, every single one except him. Seeking the Recluse's advice to find the source of the magic, the trail led straight back to her, as the description of the brooch that she had given the Guardian for power reads, at first, this magic brooch with its aura of unknowable power was intended as a ceremonial tool to calm violent winds, but the war, for better or for worse, demanded that it be employed otherwise, as a magic artifact to bring a swift end to the conflict. In a somber confrontation by the beach shores, the Recluse gives the Guardian the brooch that rooted the corrupted magic. She states that her intention was never for weaponization, but truly to heal and protect. After all, she was telling the truth and allowed the Guardian to decide her fate. With the memories and emotions all flooding in at once, and the slaughtering of all his people, and the crippling of his own wing, the Guardian lifts his spear to strike her down, until he decides to forgive her. Placing the spear on the ground, she thanks him for his mercy. He now realizes that instead of striking those remaining, he must use this newly found strength to protect his new people. There is no higher duty for a guardian, after all. The Wilder and Duchess's backstories intertwine in a more closely related way than any of the other Nightfarers. Though means revealed deeper into the night, the priestess reveals herself to be in fact the Duchess. She is much more adept with daggers and magic, but she seems helpful when she decides to join the fight nevertheless. The story of Remembrance all starts, oddly enough, with a loaf of bread. Pita bread, to be exact. Duchess says how it reminds her of her childhood in front of Wilder. The description of the bread tells us, flat bread with a rich aroma offered by the Wilder, the traditional food of a nomadic tribe from a distant, vast grassland, passed down from mother to son. It makes mention of a nomadic tribe from the grasslands, which is likely the same as the cutting tribe that the Duchess is from, which is honestly a whole rabbit hole on its own, but for now, the bread helps them connect. But she is approached later by the raider and asked to watch over Wilder as he is growing tired and drawn out from the battles. Perhaps with little time left, his will and purpose to fight is quickly waning. But in spite of this, she helps him, along with the Iron Menial, to find purpose in his quest of remembrance. He discovers that he was part of a tribe that fought the night wholeheartedly, but lost nearly all of it due to the cataclysm. The slate whetstone reads, "The clash with the night has spanned eons, and yet now precious little time remains." He does remember another figure, unknown by their face, but one that rode beside him in those battles. He knows this by an earring he kept, and with the Iron Menial's assistance, gains the other earring, revealing that it's the exact same one. The earring states, "Such ornaments were worn for generations by a distant tribe. They are delicately embellished to cast a pattern when held up to the light." He provides this earring to the Duchess, who mentions it belonged to someone close to her as well. Her relic in the earrings and his relic in the pita bread helped them to realize that they were more than just teammates in this battle. They were indeed long-lost siblings. The Wilder would later learn about the Duchess's deep-rooted links to the night and how it would erase her if the night truly faded. So he makes a rash decision once the primordial Night Lord falls. He makes himself a Night Lord using a silver tear. If you've played the main game of Elden Ring, this is a relic found in that story, and if you're familiar with that, it allows you to take on a new form, which are also primarily found in Nokron, the Eternal City, weirdly enough. Either way, the silver tear is transformative in nature, and the tear states, "Once in the lands between, it was said to have granted one a new form." That relic has the power to make something into whatever they desire to be, and so he makes himself a Night Lord to perpetuate the Night's existence solely for the purpose of his sister to live on. The Executor has also no unique ending, but he has a tale, one of regret and remembrance, as he is a cursed soul wielding a cursed blade, marked and stained with the blood of his biggest failure. When you find him, he was always seen painting, making art of familiar scenes such as the Erd Tree. It would become known to us that obviously these paintings held a real significance. They weren't random at all, and in essence they were the retellings of his past. The story would be revealed after he defeated another version of himself. Here there would be a shack with an armored body laying outside. Walking into the shack, he would find another armored Crucible Knight standing over a painter's body and filled with guilt and despair over what appeared to be the loss of a loved one. It all came together now. He was the Crucible Knight, the last one alive who had failed to protect an innocent painter from their execution. This artist was from the Land of Reeds who came to the Lands Between and lived in Altus. And the Land of Reeds is a mysterious area in Elden Ring where we only get a couple of armored descriptions that talk about the Land of Reeds, but also we can see these ships on the main map of Elden Ring that appear to be coming from the Land of Reeds. That's pretty much the only physical evidence in the game that we have from it, but otherwise, this artist came from there, and he was painting the majesty of the Erd Tree, but he never finished his painting. But the majesty of the Erd Tree was what captivated the artist, as the blessed flower description reads, "Altus flowers flush with nutrients and grace. Before, such flowers were commonplace on the Altus Plateau. The vibrant hues suggest that the flowers received plenty of sunlight and appear to shine in an ode to the resplendent Erd Tree." There was another knight sent to carry out their fate, but the executor couldn't return in time to stop the night. Now, in the present, the executor realized that he was already dead, living his life now, both as himself and the painter, carrying on the legacy of them through the painting, while also battling the guilt as a reincarnated warrior. The Executor's story is really interesting, and it seems like there's much more direct ties with the main events of Elden Ring, and especially his ties to the Erd Tree. The Golden Sprout item description reads, "A golden seed harboring a warm blessing. This one was found on a steep and snowy peak. The seed sprouted despite the harshness of its environment, like youthful potential blossoming in the crucible of adversity, or what may be called a miracle." There is probably far more connecting the Executor's story directly with some of the artists in Altus, or perhaps some of the Crucible Knights, where it appears they both resided in. That could be a whole video on its own, but for now, the Executor is tied to honoring the memory of the artist through the last piece of art on the canvas, and the art of his cursed blade. And finally, there is the Revenant, who initially is much more distrustful of the other Nightfarers, but eventually she parts ways with the Knight, as most others do in the end. But she also has the darkest and most disturbing remembrance of all of the Nightfarers. Her mere existence is a question to all that meet her, as they question her allegiance and motives. The Duchess even points out that as soon as she came here, she was hell-bent on revenge, but doesn't even really understand why. Her appearance is an odd one too, but she seems to have once been a normal girl, as her makeup brush tells us, tool for accentuating beauty of people and things, one of the Iron Menial's favorite items. Though plain, it is a reliable tool with a soft bristled brush that delicately applies carouse to the skin and other surfaces. Your beauty deserves nothing less. After defeating the ghastly beings around her in order to gain her trust and recruit her, they remain friendly to you and are willing to help in her journey to remember who she was despite that. All she knew at first was that she wanted to get rid of the Knight with pure, unadulterated vengeance. What perplexed her was her own appearance, as her journal entry states, "In the mirror, I conceal the ways in which the Knight eats away at me, as I apply the cosmetics given to me by the Iron Menial. I recall his words to me. Within your memories is a hole of not inconsequential size. It seems that the Knight is using its toehold to take root. The recluse was the one who made this observation, but I know not how much she is worth my trust. That aside, I cannot grow accustomed to applying makeup with my own hand. Back at home, someone would have done it for me. The task finally complete, I caressed the smoothness of my cheeks. Now I come to think of it, what was the name I gave this doll?" In the process of slowly uncovering her memories, her spirit yearned for the demise of her enemy worthy of her vengeance, and with the help of the Duchess, finds a way to learn it. She helps her once her body starts to fragment, revealing a skeletal corpse underneath. Being led to the recluse, the Revenant delves into memory fragments a few times, first learning that her name was Daphne before learning the whole truth. But the truth can be a bitter pill to swallow for some. Going back the final time, we see the entire picture. She enters the mansion belonging to the Northern-Croft family. We can see the portrait of Edgar Blackcoat Northern-Croft and witness the true corruption of the Knight in its purest form. A massacre is happening here in this manner. A man is shown in the shadows slaughtering the family in a fit of murderous rage, and now we understand what actually happened. The doll would try to reach out to protect the daughter, but would be unable to do so, and sometime after, the doll awakens, picking up a pendant near the body in its first act, now possessing the spirit of that girl who was killed. Revealed by that pendant to be Chloe Northerncroft, only possible through pure will and vengeance, they now become one being. She is focused on ending the suffering and stopping the night from continuing that slaughter ever again. The description of the old portrait reads, "An intricate painting of a girl of pure heart and an elderly companion that conveys both trust and affection. On that night, the doll understood. The young girl wished to live, and with that understanding, the doll found her purpose." On the back of the painting is a hurriedly scrawled, fading message. "Chloe, seek happiness, for you deserve it more than anyone." The Revenant's motivations and her actions make total sense now and are definitely understandable. Now, what I find curious is the involvement and the participation of the Nightfarers themselves to perpetuate the night. When doing Duchess's quest, the iron coin description reads, "An iron coin imbued with a small blessing by the priestess emits a faint warmth. The girl made a wish to the mechanical doll that a blessing would reach him, a blessing that could open the eyes of one who is already dead but refuses to accept it." Now that you understand all of the Nightfarers' stories and their motivations and where they come from, to me, what I think is the most curious about all of the Nightfarers is that Duchess is far more mysterious and open-ended and vague than anybody else. It's very hard to pin down exactly what her role is, whether it is she who perpetuates the night or even created it. Now, that iron coin is very interesting to me, and what I find curious is the wishing part. When you look at the design of this coin, it almost resembled the bifurcated eyes on the Libra, creature of the night, which, as you know, the equilibrious beast is all about making deals and having trade-offs. In some way, it seems the Duchess herself is more responsible for the night than anyone actually realizes, as the night would cease to exist without her and vice versa. I think the Duchess deserves a closer look sometime. She definitely harbors more secrets than anybody really knows. The iron key description tells us, "A small key featuring fine ornamentation, a fine work of craft made by Gillian, the Duchess's steward and de facto patron. The Duchess once lived under the Viscount's roof, where she applied herself as a virtuous thief. She locked the tools of her trade inside a box of prized possessions, which she hid in a dim cellar. This practice has not changed since coming to the Round Table Hold. She yet keeps her secrets safe from prying eyes, concealing them in darkened corners." And I think that last line is really telling when it comes to the Duchess's story, because there are a lot of secrets that, even if you're somewhat paying attention, might arise to you. So it should be clear that the Duchess is an expert at hiding things away and keeping secrets. In Nightreign, there is an item with an insanely rare drop rate that can only be found in the boxes at the churches of America. It's about a 1 in 3,000 drop rate, but you can find an item called a cord's end. The description of this item states, "A carefully woven cord. This cord belonged to the young girls who were housed in a place that was meant as an eternal secret. The cutting gifted tribe vowed to sacrifice their flesh while concealing the truth, but the girls were too young to oblige." It's clear that there's something really twisted going on with young girls and sacrifice, and the cutting gifted tribe is made in reference inside the tombs in the crypt, where coincidentally the Duchess is all too familiar with. Now, the cord end doesn't seem to be hair, which Marika left behind a braid in the shaman village. It's similar, but rather this seems to be more of a cloth or some type of clothing to me. But inside this extremely well-hidden cave of sacrifice, we see a petrified wood bark ascetic of the Round Table Crypt and the Spirit Shelter. There is a statue of a girl embedded in the wall with her hands tied by a rope. In front of her are 3 sacrificial twig talismans. This points to a much darker story to the Duchess that has yet to fully unravel. If you'd like to see a more detailed video on the Duchess and even the Night Lords and their connection to each other, definitely let me know. But for now, understanding the deeper lore of Nightreign, it is imperative to first understand our only connections to them, which are the Nightfarers themselves. themselves. Now, you might think that this is all well and good, but what are these weird and odd connections to Dark Souls? I mean, we have enemies in the game, such as like the Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls 1, or we have the Duke's Dear Freya in Dark Souls 2, the Nameless King in Dark Souls 3. What are these doing here? You might say that it's just for the game, right? It's coincidental, it doesn't mean anything, or even our Nightfarers themselves have outfits that resemble people from those respective games. But this isn't merely coincidence, and if you'd like a video kind of detailing where Dark Souls is in relation to this game, let me know, and I will definitely make a video about that. Now, I also think it's possible that the Night Lord is not really the true threat of this game. Hailster, or the Shape of Night, is obviously responsible for the perpetuation of the twisting that we see in Limfeld and the shattering that recurred as a result, but I don't think that it's nearly the end, as I'll leave you with one final item description from the Trace of Night. It reads, "The qualities of the Night Lord bearing the manifest potential to alter fate itself. The light dimly reveals the contours of a greater being that lies beyond the Night Lord."